They're all gonna pay. Things are gonna get a lot better around here once I'm in charge.
Yeah! Things are about to get awesome! High five! Or, not.
Today we are here again talking about Borderlands, but recently I just beat Borderlands 3 and I actually loved the game and I was really surprised by how it was. So I thought, why not try out one of the other titles that I ended up not liking too much back then? And that is Borderlands, the pre-sequel. Now I did play the one on the Handsome Jack collection, which by the way, I thought had Borderlands 1 on it. But checking the back and actually playing the game, I realized it's only pre-sequel and Borderlands 2. Now the good thing about these is that I'm pretty sure the DLC is on disc and that's amazing and everything. And this is the version I played, but I do want to get around to playing this one in the future because it'd be fun to play it on the original hardware. First thing I'd say to touch on is the story, and yeah, it's up there, man. It's definitely better than Borderlands 3. I feel like I slept on the story the first time I played through this game, and I was just like, oh my god, like this. I don't know what I expected after Borderlands 2. Well, like, if this wasn't good enough, what was I truly expecting? I think the biggest problem with Borderlands the pre-sequel that people had, including myself, I guess, was for the fact that you can't really farm bosses. But I feel like that's just become a thing now. I feel like Borderlands 1 and 2 had those things going on for them. Maybe not even Borderlands 1. I don't really know how the farming is on Borderlands 1 for bosses, but I know on Borderlands 2, of course, it's like perfect. But on Borderlands the pre-sequel, and maybe even 3, and maybe even Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, the farming is like non-existent. It's not really a thing you get to do too much. Because there's just a lot of bosses in these games. I'm pretty sure for 3 and the pre-sequel included, where it's a one-off and done. You kill them once, and then it's like, that's it for that playthrough. You have to play with a different character, or you're going to have to go to True Vault Hunter mode and try again. I don't remember if it's like that. It might be. I'm not 100%. But for the pre-sequel, I know that that was a big problem with people. There was a lot of farming that they wanted to do. I mean, we come off Borderlands 2, where it's like farm, farm, farm. You made a whole community out of it. And then you kind of just took it away in the pre-sequel, which was definitely an interesting choice. I guess they didn't really like the idea that a lot of their community was that, but at the end of the day, if that's your community at this point, and you're a looter shooter, you kind of have to just accept that, and not try and kill off your fan base, because I feel like the game would have been received a lot better if you could farm, like almost all the bosses in the game, but you can't. I feel like there's only a select few that you can do that with. I don't really care to farm outside of Borderlands 2. I just don't really feel that attached to most guns. I was more just interested in like having fun with the gunplay and the combat. In general, I wasn't really looking for no fucking unkempt herald. I mean, if you only care about the unkempt herald like I used to, you're not going to have fun in any other Borderlands game because you don't have an unkempt herald. I think they've tried to repeat them. I think the pre-sequel technically has its own like version, but it's not an unkempt herald by any means. It's heavily nerfed and just not even really close to what it used to be. You know, if you hold on to Borderlands 2 too much and you expect that kind of those kind of guns and everything like that, of how fun they are to use and all that kind of stuff and how OP you feel, if you expect that going into every other Borderlands, you're not going to have fun. And that's the problem. And that's why I'm having more fun going back to these games, because I didn't first visit Borderlands 2. If I first visited Borderlands 2 and I went to go play 3 in the pre-sequel, they would have not been fun. Because I don't know if it's a thing where Borderlands 2 is so high above them, or if it's just because the way that the game was made, just basically the guns themselves specifically, were so OP, and there were so many specific ones that were pretty OP, like the Unkempt Herald. There was like something called the Scarab, I think, and the Pirate's Booty DLC. It's like an SMG. That shit's really fucked. You got Salvador. I mean, Salvador's crazy. You got Slag. I don't think Slag was a thing in other games, actually. Now that I think about that, I don't think Slag is a thing in the pre-sequel, nor is it a thing in 3. So there is that too. Slag was a thing that made enemies weaker. You could also use a pistol that made it so you slag them and heal yourself. I mean, Borderlands 2 was just made for you to be disgustingly OP. So that's where I feel like, you know, you go play that game and then you go play the other ones, you're like, oh shit, this is more balanced. This isn't fun. Like, that's the problem. So You kind of run into that in the pre-sequel, where it's a lot more balanced, there's more difficult sections and such. So, I mean, the game still was kind of a breeze to get through, but I had fun. But yeah, the story, man, it follows Handsome Jack before he turns into a complete villain. He's actually more like a hero in this game for most of it. It really makes the heroes look like the villain in this game for the most part, but you can see how Handsome Jack kind of starts to turn into like a villain pretty much, because he starts to become fucking nuts and start doing things that's a little fucking sketchy, starts killing people when he really shouldn't. It's a little weird.
Huh, that felt good. Anywho, let's talk.
But it's much better than most stories. It's better than Borderlands 1 story. Borderlands 1 story is not its strong suit. Borderlands 3 story, it's probably a bit better than, for sure. And Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, yet again, I don't have a big opinion on it because I don't fully remember what's even going on there. Gunplay, I mean, it's really just Borderlands 2. There is the idea of you're in zero gravity now, so certain things work a bit differently with, like, I guess just combat in general. But when it comes to pure gunplay, the brands are the same. I think they added a whole new weapon class in this game, and it was the laser guns. Those guns were fucking insane. They're by far one of my favorite guns I've ever gotten to use in Borderlands 3, especially if you get the continuous shooting laser weapons. They are insanely fun to use. You end up getting one that's for sure going to be a continuous laser weapon, and that is from Moxie herself. And that's by far one of my favorite guns in the game. But towards the end of the game, I had one of these laser weapons. I say towards the end, but it was at the end of the game. I had one of these laser weapons, and it just destroyed the final boss. I mean, like, the final boss did not stand a chance against this weapon. The new weapons were so fun to use. I'm glad they actually added a whole new weapon type. It's not really something I think about too much, but every time I go back, I'm like, oh yeah, these are a thing, and they're like really fucking fun to use, and they're really fucking good. They're not something to sleep on, especially if they're continuous shooting. I think the other ones that shoot like little blaster bolts are a little fucking lame, but the continuous laser, they're really fun and they're really good. Like, I think that they only added like a few things. I think that they only added like an element and like a few new moves. But no, they added a whole new weapon in this game. So it's a pretty big deal right there. They added Cryo as an element, and it's actually really good and really cool. It's an interesting thing where I think for most, maybe Cryo you don't have to be in an atmosphere. But with other ones, you do have to be in an atmosphere to use the element and actually have it work, which is a really interesting thing to do. It actually makes you turn there's like these bubbles that you can turn on throughout the map that makes an atmosphere. And when you're cloud trapped, they're still useful because it makes it so that you can actually use elements with your weapons. So that's a really well done thing to do. Keeps it like actually relevant rather than just needing oxygen. Even though you could need it for the slam's fully useful in itself. So they did that too. They added the slam in the combat, and I love the slam. The slam's fun as hell to use, especially when it has Cryo involved. But I'm pretty sure you don't need to be in an environment to use Cryo, which completely makes sense. And that's honestly such a great element that they added. I loved Cryo. I used it pretty much as I could. A few guys were resistant to it, but otherwise, you know, it's just... It kind of put the game on easy mode at times, because you just freeze them and then they're very vulnerable. So it can make it very easy at times, and I don't care. I like that. I don't feel as attached to the loot as I do to Borderlands 2, and I think that's actually a good thing. That's probably what they were trying to do. In Borderlands 2, you feel attached to a very few set of weapons and such, so you don't really experiment and try anything else. In Borderlands 3 in the pre-sequel, you're kind of switching up quite often because you're not too attached to really much. You're enjoying everything for the most part, and it kind of makes you enjoy everything. But you don't, like, enjoy anything too much to the point of the Unkempt Herald where you're like, I'm not switching off this gun. This is all I'm going to use, and even if I find a gun that's technically better stats-wise, I'm not going to fucking touch it. And that was probably a problem that they really didn't like in Borderlands 2, is that you made all these, like, the huge thing they advertise is how many guns they make. They make all these guns for the game, and then people only use like 5. And it's like, damn, well, that fucking sucks. We wasted our time with all these guns that we created, and nobody gives a shit. You know, so that's probably something they wanted to change up. And they definitely changed that up here in Borderlands, the pre-sequel. They made it so you end up using tons of different weapons to stay up to, like, to be able to take out these enemies and work with what you need to. And elements are very important in this game. You'll really want to use Cryo at any given point you can, but when they're resistant, you got to use something else for sure, because when someone's resistant to Cryo, it's fucking useless. But they also added a new rarity called Moonshine in this game. Moonshine is a thing you get with Moonstones, which is basically the new Iridian currency from Borderlands 2. Or Iridium, not Iridian. Iridium is a currency in Borderlands 2. You use it to upgrade your storage. You use it to upgrade like ammo. You can use it in the grinder, and the grinder is something where you can. I love the grinder in this game, but that's something I gotta give it to them. In Borderlands, the pre-sequel, there's this grinder thing that you unlock about halfway through the game, maybe a bit less than that, and it allows you to combine multiple weapons to just create one new one, and it can be better. And you can also use Moonstones to make it so that it guarantees its chance of being the best it can possibly be. So like, let's say you put 3 blues together, you'll get like, and you moonstone grind it, you're probably going to get a purple. And there's also a chance that it becomes a moonshine purple, which gives it like this extra buff and makes it a bit more stronger than a regular purple by all means. And it's a really cool idea, and they have a really cool look on them where they're actually like shining this like blue look of a streak throughout the gun, and it looks really awesome, and it's really well done. And the idea of the grinder itself is so much fun, and I love it so much, honestly, man. I love just going out, grinding a bunch of weapons when I was younger, bringing it back to the grinder, merging them together, and just seeing what I get. I used to farm the level 30 secret boss in the beginning area, get his legendary 3 times, merge them, and just see what random legendary I got. And I had so much fucking fun doing that. And honestly, man, the memories that unlock from that, I really like Borderlands, the pre-sequel, man. It was such a good game. The Moonshine, or the Moonstone idea was really cool, and how they did it with the grinder was really fun, and how they made Moonshine weapons. They even have Moonstone chests throughout the story that you can pay 40 Moonstone for, and those give Moonshine weapons, and that's really, really cool. The game is just, it's got a lot more going for it than you really think about. I act like all they really did was add Cryo and like zero gravity, but the grinder was a whole new idea. The Moonstone currency really does just replace Iridium, but it also does its own things. It makes it so that Moonshine weapons exist, which is a new rarity or a new kind of weapon. It goes into the grinder to make it so that you increase your odds or guarantee the best weapon possible, and it gives you the chance for a Moonshine. So it's like they did do more with this game than you'd think, and it's not bad, you know, like the things that they added and things that they did different were all pretty much just good. I will say that the oxygen thing was a shitty situation, but you are on the moon. I mean, you're gonna need fucking oxygen, that's just how it is. But if you play as Claptrap, which is a pretty fun character to play as, you don't even have to worry about oxygen. The only thing that does for you is the oxygen boost when you're like flying through the air a little bit, and when you want to ground pound someone, like do a slam. Otherwise, oxygen is pretty much irrelevant to Claptrap. I still think right now, Borderlands, it basically goes Borderlands the pre-sequel, Borderlands probably 1, 3, and then 2. I really don't have an opinion on Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. Right now, from what I remember, it might be below Borderlands the pre-sequel, because I do not remember liking that game really at all. I don't really want to give Tiny Tina's Wonderlands an opinion. I gotta play through that game again before I ever do that. But Borderlands the pre-sequel at this moment is still like the lowest, the technical worst of the Borderlands series, but playing through them all, they're all good. They're like, I like all of them. None of them are weak, none of them are bad. I'm saying it's the worst, while it's also still a very good game. I probably gave it like a 7.5 out of 10 if I were just to think off the top of my head what I rated it. And that's still a great rating. That just goes to show you how good this Borderlands series is, and how they're really not missing, because they really perfected the looter shooter idea with Borderlands 2, and they've tried to hold it together with Borderlands the pre-sequel and 3, and they still kind of do. It's just not as up to par, you know. It's not as good, but it's still a well above game when it comes to the looter shooter genre, and there's nothing really else that hits quite like Borderlands does when it comes to that genre in general. I wish there was, man, but there's really not quite anything that hits that spot quite like Borderlands does. And you know what? I can't wait to go back to probably either Borderlands 1 or Tiny Tina's Wonderland next. Borderlands 2 is going to be the last one I go to. I have to make that the last one so I can really just wrap it up with what I think is the best Borderlands game to ever be made. And probably will ever be the best Borderlands game ever made. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Hit the thumbs up button if you did. Subscribe to my content like this. This was a great game, and I can't wait to touch on more Borderlands content in the future. In fact, I'll definitely have to do some of the DLCs for this game and maybe some of the other games and do videos on those as well. But yeah, guys, that's going to do it for the video. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.